I accidentally married my cousin. Now what? I met Ellie at a summer music festival in Austin. She was fun, adventurous, and had this infectious laugh that made me want to keep talking to her forever. We clicked instantly, and within 6 months, we were inseparable. When I proposed under a sky full of fireworks on New Year's Eve, she screamed, "Yes!" before I even finished my question. The wedding was small but perfect, held in a charming little chapel with only close friends and family. Everything felt right. That is, until we sat down to go through some family documents for a joint bank account a week after the honeymoon. "Wait, your mom's name is Catherine Roberts?" Ellie asked, frowning at the paperwork. "Yeah, why?" I replied, barely looking up. Her face went pale. "That's my aunt's name." We stared at each other for a long second. No, 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 that can't be right," I stammered, snatching my phone. "Maybe it's just a common name." But after some frantic calls to our parents and a deep dive into family ancestry, the truth came crashing down on us. My mom, Catherine Roberts, was indeed the sister of Ellie's father. Ellie and I were first cousins, married first cousins. I felt like my soul left my body. Ellie just kept repeating, "No, no, no, this is a joke, right?" It was not a joke. So, now what? We debated annulment, but Texas law didn't automatically void first cousin marriages, even though it technically wasn't allowed. Great. So we were illegally but still legally married. "Do we tell people?" Ellie whispered that night in bed, eyes wide. "Absolutely not," I whispered back. But avoiding family was impossible. At Sunday dinner, I couldn't unsee the resemblance between my uncle, now father-in-law, and my mom. Every time someone said family, I flinched. Like any rational person in crisis, I Googled, "married my cousin. What now?" The results were not comforting. Some articles said it wasn't a huge deal in other cultures. Others pointed out potential genetic risks for kids. A Reddit thread suggested we move to a country where it was normal. Another just said, "Y'all better pray." The "what do we do?" talk after a week of silent freaking out, Ellie sat me down. "I love you," she said, gripping my hands. "But what do we do?" We laid out the options. 1. Stay married and pretend we never found out. 2. Get an annulment and pretend this never happened. 3. Move to a remote island and never speak of this again. We decided on option 2. We loved each other, but neither of us could handle the family reunion awkwardness for life. We filed for an annulment under mistake of fact. The court clerk didn't even blink. Apparently, we weren't the first accidental cousins to pass through. People asked why we split, and we gave vague answers like, "It just wasn't right." Only our parents knew the truth, and they swore to take it to their graves. Ellie and I stayed friends, but sometimes when we caught each other's eyes at family gatherings, we had to fight the urge to burst out laughing. Months passed after the annulment. Ellie and I did our best to move on, avoiding awkward family gatherings whenever possible. I tried dating again, but every time I looked at someone new, a tiny voice in my head whispered, "Yeah, but is she your cousin?" The trauma ran deep. One evening, while helping my mom clean out some old boxes, I found a faded envelope buried under a stack of old letters. It was addressed to Catherine Roberts in careful handwriting. Curious, I pulled it out and flipped it open. Inside was a birth certificate. But not mine. It was Ellie's. And under father's name, it wasn't my Uncle Paul. It was unknown. A chill ran down my spine. Mom?" I called, holding up the paper. Her face turned ghost white. She snatched the document like I'd just found a bomb. "Where did you get this?" "In the boxes. Mom, why does it say Ellie's dad is unknown?" She hesitated, then sighed heavily, sinking into a chair. "Because Paul isn't her real father." My heart nearly stopped. "Wait, what?" She rubbed her temples. "Your aunt had an affair. A long time ago. She and Paul separated for a while, but when she found out she was pregnant, he agreed to raise Ellie as his own. No one ever questioned it. So, I gulped, brain trying to process. Ellie's not actually my cousin? Mom nodded slowly. I sat down, staring at the floor. My whole world tilted. Ellie and I had gone through months of emotional hell, thinking we had made some terrible genetic mistake, only to find out we were never related at all. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ellie at lightning speed. She answered on the second ring. "Hey," she said cautiously. "Everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "I have something insane to tell you." She came over within the hour. I showed her the birth certificate. Mom backed up the story, and by the end of it, Ellie was pacing the living room, hands in her hair. "So, we're not cousins?" she asked for the 10th time. "Not by blood," I confirmed. She stared at me. "So we got an annulment for nothing? We broke up for nothing?" "Pretty much." We sat in silence for a minute, letting it sink in. Then Ellie burst into laughter. "What's so funny?" I asked, confused. "This is literally the most ridiculous thing that has ever happened to anyone." She wiped tears from her eyes. "We freaked out, ended our marriage, and went through all of that stress, just to find out we could have stayed together the whole time." I laughed too, because, really, what else could we do? We had spent months trying to forget each other. Now, the question lingered in the air between us. What do we do now? I cleared my throat. "So, do you want to grab dinner?" Ellie grinned. "Like a first date?" "Well, technically our second first date." She grabbed her coat. "All right, but you're paying. You owe me for all the emotional damage." Ellie and I started dating again, if you could even call it that. It wasn't exactly normal to go on a first date with someone you had already married and divorced, but somehow things felt right. We tried to keep things low-key. No need to send the family into another meltdown just yet. But that didn't last long. It happened at my mom's birthday dinner. Ellie and I arrived separately, thinking we'd play it cool. But families notice everything. "Aren't you two sitting awfully close for an annulled couple?" my cousin Jessica said, smirking. "We're just friends," I said quickly. Ellie shot me a look. "Really?" My mom cleared her throat. "Actually, there's something we should probably tell you all." The room went silent. Then, in a dramatic soap opera-worthy moment, my mom revealed that Ellie was not actually my cousin. Gasps. Forks dropping. My Uncle Paul muttering, "Jesus Christ." Then, my actual Aunt Catherine, the woman who had kept this secret for decades, stood up and stormed out of the room. Well, that went well. The next week was pure chaos. Half the family was mad at my aunt for hiding the truth. The other half was mad at Ellie and me for, well, being Ellie and me. "You got divorced for no reason?" my dad asked, rubbing his temples. "Why didn't you just check first?" "We thought we checked," I groaned. My Uncle Paul was eerily calm. "Look," he finally said, "I raised Ellie as my daughter. She's my daughter no matter what some paperwork says. If you two want to be together, that's your business. But understand that not everyone's going to be comfortable with it." Translation: Good luck at Thanksgiving. Ellie and I decided to push forward. We loved each other. That hadn't changed. But we had changed. There was baggage now. Fear. Hesitation. Every time we got too comfortable, one of us would blurt out something like, "Are we really doing this?" Or, "What if we regret it again?" One night, Ellie sighed, rolling onto her side in bed. "Do you think this will ever not be weird?" I turned to her. "I think life is weird, and we just got an extra dose." She snorted. "That's the most you answer ever." I kissed her forehead. "We'll figure it out." Fast forward 6 months. Things were going well. We were happy, but we still hadn't figured out how to break the news to everyone else. So we decided to rip off the Band-Aid. At a family reunion in the middle of my grandmother's backyard, Ellie stood up, clinked her glass, and announced, "So, we're back together." dead silence. Then my cousin Jessica, bless her heart, raised a glass and said, "Well, at least y'all won't have weird inbred babies now." Cheers. Laughter. A few awkward pats on the back. Some whispered side conversations. And just like that, life moved on. A year later, we got married again. This time, we triple-checked our ancestry first. The wedding was beautiful, small, intimate. No awkward family drama, mostly. And when the officiant said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Ellie grinned at me and whispered, "For real this time." And just like that, we got our second chance. Getting married a second time was surreal. The first time, we had no idea we were cousins. Well, not cousins, but you know what I mean. This time, we knew everything. Our messy history, our family drama, and exactly what we were getting into. At the altar, Ellie squeezed my hand. "If we have to get annulled again, I swear to God I'm becoming a nun." I grinned. Deal. The ceremony was perfect. No surprises, no last-minute revelations, no long-lost relatives showing up with new family secrets. Just us, surrounded by people who, mostly, accepted our absurd love story. Well, except for Aunt Catherine. She RSVP'd no with a 3-word reply. Still too weird. Fair enough. For the first time in years, Ellie and I tried to settle into something normal. You know, date nights, grocery shopping, binge-watching TV shows without pausing every 5 minutes to discuss our existential crisis. But normal isn't easy when your entire relationship started with an accidental marriage. Anytime we met new people, we had to make a choice. 1. Tell the whole truth and watch them stare at us like we were aliens. 2. Lie and pretend we had a totally average love story. We usually went with option 2, but then came the podcast incident. Ellie and I were listening to one of those wild relationship stories podcasts, where people call in and share their weirdest, most embarrassing love life disasters. Ellie grabbed my phone. "We have to send our story in." I laughed. No way. But she was already typing. 2 weeks later, while we were cooking dinner, the hosts read our submission live on air. "Okay, this next one is insane," the host said, chuckling. "A couple accidentally got married, found out they were first cousins, got divorced, then found out they weren't cousins, and got married again." The other host gasped. No way." Ellie and I froze. "They're literally married right now," the host continued. "Imagine explaining that to your kids." Ellie burst out laughing. I turned off the stove in horror. That episode went viral. Comments poured in. Some people called us relationship goals. Others were convinced we were lying. One guy wrote, "Bro, just date someone else." There are 8 billion people on Earth. Fair point. A year after the wedding, Ellie and I had another big decision. Did we want kids? And more importantly, how the hell would we explain this story to them? I mean, technically, we don't have to tell them. Ellie mused one night. I stared at her. "You think we can just skip that part?" She shrugged. "We could say we met at a festival. That part's true." I laughed. "And when they ask about our first wedding?" Vow renewal?" We both knew we'd have to tell them someday. Hopefully, way down the line. Like when they were old enough to find it funny instead of traumatizing. But first, we had to have them. That brought up a whole new wave of anxiety. Even though we weren't actually cousins, the fear of, what if something's genetically wrong, still haunted us. So, like responsible adults, we got genetic testing done before trying for kids. The doctor called us with the results a week later. "You two are perfectly healthy and have no concerning genetic overlaps," she said. Then, after a pause, "Why did you think you might?" Ellie and I looked at each other. "It's a long story," I muttered. A year later, Ellie gave birth to our daughter, Grace. And you know what? For the first time in forever, life actually felt normal. No more family scandals, no more existential crises. Just a happy, weird, wonderful little family. Though at some point in the distant future, we'd have to sit Grace down and explain, "Sweetheart, before we tell you how we met, just promise you won't freak out." For the first few years of Grace's life, things were blissfully normal. She was a happy kid, Ellie and I were loving parents, and for once, there were no family secrets lurking in the shadows. But as she got older, we knew we couldn't put off the conversation forever. "When do we tell her?" Ellie asked one night after Grace went to bed. I sighed. "I don't know. Maybe when she's like 30? Ellie smacked my arm. "Be serious." I groaned. "Fine. We wait until she's old enough to not think she was born from some weird cousin love." Ellie snorted. "That might be never." The moment came when Grace was 10 years old. She had a school project on family trees and needed our help. "Mommy, Daddy," she said, holding up a big sheet of paper. "Can you help me fill this out?" Ellie and I exchanged a look. Crap. I took a deep breath. "Sweetie, before we start, there's something funny about Mommy and Daddy's story." Grace tilted her head. "Funny how?" Ellie chuckled nervously. "Well, you know how sometimes people make mistakes, but then everything turns out okay?" Grace's eyes lit up. "Like when I thought I lost my hamster, but he was actually under my bed?" Yeah, kinda like that," I said. Then, carefully, we explained the whole saga. The accidental marriage, the cousin panic, the annulment, the not actually being cousins, and the second wedding. By the end, Grace was staring at us, wide-eyed. "So, you got married? Twice?" she asked slowly. "Yep," Ellie said. "And you thought you were cousins, but you weren't?" "Exactly," I said, relieved that she was taking it well. Grace blinked. "That's so gross, Dad." Ellie burst out laughing. "We weren't actually cousins, though." "But you thought you were." Grace made a dramatic gagging noise. "Ew, I'm telling my friends." I face-palmed. "Oh, God." And she did. The next day, I got a call from her teacher. "Mr. Roberts," she said, sounding hesitant. "Grace gave a very interesting presentation about her family tree today." I groaned. "Oh, no." The teacher cleared her throat. "Let's just say the entire class now thinks she comes from a legendary love story. One student even asked if you two were on a reality show." Ellie was in tears laughing when I told her. We had spent years carefully managing this story, and our 10-year-old had blown the lid off in one day. It didn't end there. A week later, Ellie got a text from her best friend. Why is there a TikTok about you with 2 million views?" We opened the link. It was a video of Grace dramatically retelling our story to a group of kids at recess. Someone's older sibling had filmed it and posted it with the caption, "Y'all, this girl said her parents accidentally married as cousins and I can't breathe." Comments flooded in. "This is a Netflix movie waiting to happen." Ellie and her husband are literally Romeo and Juliet, but dumber. Plot twist. What if they actually are cousins and just don't know it yet? I blocked that person. Respect to the kid for casually flexing that her parents are iconic. I buried my face in my hands. "Ellie, this is our second time going viral. What is our life?" Ellie wiped tears from her eyes. "At this point, we should just sell the movie rights." Honestly? She had a point. Happily ever after, with a side of internet fame. Eventually, the internet moved on to the next viral story and things settled down. Grace grew up knowing she had the weirdest how my parents met story in history, but she wore it like a badge of honor. And in the end, we realized something. Yeah, our love story was messy. Yeah, we had gone through a lot. But at the end of the day, we wouldn't change a thing. Even if our kid turned us into a viral sensation twice. Years passed. Grace grew up, went to college, and eventually stopped telling everyone about our bizarre love story. Though I'm pretty sure she milked it for attention at every party. Ellie and I lived a happy, normal life. Well, as normal as possible when your entire marriage started as an accidental family scandal. But then, just when we thought all the chaos was behind us, life threw one final curveball. It started as a joke. Grace got one of those Ancestry DNA kits for fun. Want to see if we have royal blood? She teased, handing me an extra test. I laughed and swabbed my cheek. Ellie did the same. We mailed them off and didn't think much about it. A few weeks later, Grace texted us in all caps. WTF, check your emails right now. Confused, Ellie and I opened our results, and that's when my stomach dropped. There, in bold letters, was a match I never expected. Ellie, 50% DNA match, full sibling. I went cold. My hands started shaking. Ellie read it at the same time I did. No, she whispered. No, 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 this has to be a mistake. Grace called us, her voice frantic. Why does it say you guys are brother and sister? My world tilted. All this time, we had been worried about being cousins. But what if the truth was even worse? After a panicked call to my mother, after hours of digging through old records, after confronting every relative we could find, we finally got the answer. And it was worse than we imagined. Ellie and I weren't actually full siblings, but we were half-siblings. My father, who had always been a quiet, reserved man, had a secret. Long before he met my mother, he had a brief affair. That affair resulted in a child. That child was Ellie, and no one had ever known. Not even him. For years, we had convinced ourselves that we had dodged the worst-case scenario, that we weren't cousins, that our love was safe, that our marriage wasn't a mistake. But now everything we had built, our love, our life, our family, was sitting on the edge of a knife. I turned to Ellie, my heart pounding. What do we do? I whispered. She looked at me, eyes filled with shock, pain, and something else. Something terrifying. I don't know, she said. And for the first time in our chaotic, ridiculous, impossible love story, we had no idea how it was going to end.